So we're doing Genesis 35 today because we did two chapters last week. Um, we're probably going to do two chapters again today, actually.
Because no one's gonna show up
Um, is no one going to show up next week?
Memorial Day.
Is next week Memorial
I'm
Day?
doing a Bible study on Memorial Day.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll all go to his house and have
I mean,
a Bible study
okay.
while we're hanging out.
I'm not planning on
Whatever.
having people over, but maybe.
I mean, I suppose I suppose we could take the week off for Memorial Day. I honestly didn't know that
Yeah,
that's
we
what
did
it was.
one last week, and now we're currently doing two, so we can take 2 weeks off.
Oh, whoa, crazy.
July 4th is a Monday, though, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think it is.
I don't keep track of the calendar that much.
Yes, it is.
But anyways, yeah. So, I think that's actually going to be kind of okay. Because I don't have that much to say necessarily about the content of this chapter, or really even the next chapter. And yeah, the next chapter is and is just a genealogy list. I really see this. So these two chapters actually kind of go together, not really thematically, but just structurally of what like the book is. This is basically the end of like a major section in the Bible, which is the stories of the patriarchs. And we're going to go into the next major section, which is going to be like about Joseph and Israel and Egypt. But really, even that story is just kind of like the preamble and setup to Exodus, which is like the main, like, I would say it's like actually, I'd actually say that the Exodus is like the main heart and soul story of the Old Testament. Well, especially of the Torah, because
where religion officially starts.
Yeah, really officially starts, and is really the defining thing for like the whole nation, and is it's where all of these symbolic patterns and everything that we've been talking about in these little miniature versions of the story up until that time really get played out and fleshed out. And it's that story that's then going to get turned. It's the Exodus story that's going to turn around and be the model for like at all the Exodus story becomes the model for like everything that comes after it. So like the exile becomes like it's a remember that we've been through this kind of being out of the land time before and all this stuff. And even like when Jesus shows up, Jesus's life models the Exodus journey, because he, like whenever he's young, he goes down into Egypt, right? And then like comes back up, spends time in the wilderness prior to being in the land. And then like he gets into the land and he's doing a bunch of stuff involving sacrifice. Like the life of Christ really mimics in a lot of ways the life of Israel as a nation. Um, um, and so because of that, these two chapters really just, especially as we read them, they just feel like they feel like the end of like a school paper to me. Basically like you wrote a bunch of stuff and then you had a couple of like random things at the end, and so you just like stuck them all in there at the end. You just like you had some extra sources that you didn't really know how to like use or anything, and so
You get
you
credit for using.
and so you're just like, oh, you're like, yeah, this is probably important, but I don't really know how to what to do with it, so I just stick it in there at the end. And I especially get that in feeling in like the chapter 36, because chapter 36 is super repetitive. And this chapter, this chapter is repetitive. And we'll see what I mean whenever we start it up. But let me make sure that I have my audio right.
Chapter 34.
Okay, and so oops, so 35.
Chapter 35.
God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there. Make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." So
Okay, so remember he just resolved more or less everything with Esau, and then he had this weird thing where he went to Shechem rather than going to Bethel. So God is recalling him to go to Bethel and not to be at Shechem, where he just had this problem with Dinah and the people at Shechem. Shechem being the person. Oh, Michael did join. At least I thought I hit emit. Yeah, there he is. Hello, Michael. I thought maybe I accidentally rejected you, but okay. But yeah, so we see God. We just started the chapter, Michael. It's chapter 35. And so yeah, so he's reaffirming this call that he gave to him whenever he told him to even leave Laban. Okay.
Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Put away the foreign gods that are among you and purify yourselves and change your garments. Then let us arise and go up to Bethel, so that I may make there an altar to the God who answers me in the day of my distress and has been with me wherever I have gone."
Okay. So a couple things here. One, you have this line, put away the foreign gods that are among you and purify yourself and change your garments. So in the way that I read this, seeing as how this is kind of like the closing, sort of a closing story on, because Jacob's is obviously involved with Joseph, but it's kind of the closing story on kind of everything that's involved with Jacob. It seems like he's finally like, hey, we're gonna try and turn things around, even though I was supposed to do that whenever I wrestled God, but I screwed up again. So now he has this get the foreign gods that are among you away. One, it's weird because how does he know that there are foreign gods among them? I mean, he has to have some inclination that there are foreign gods among them. Maybe he knows that Rachel has. Maybe at this point he now knows of that. Maybe Rachel has brought out those foreign gods and can see them or something like that. But I also think it's interesting that he connects this idea, right? It says, "Put away the foreign gods that are among you, purify yourselves, and change your garments." So, like those kind of three things: purifying yourself, putting away the foreign gods, and changing your garments, are all connected ideas. And if you remember back, whenever we talked about the instance of her stealing these foreign idols and that being related to like something to do with like menstrual cycles things, you kind of have that same connection here being like, okay, change your garments, because there's the connection between like rags and the idols. So it's like you clean yourself up and you like get rid of all of that stuff. But it's everybody in the community that has to do that. We'll keep going. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention is that it's weird to me that he's like, so I want to go to Bethel so that I can make an altar to God there, because he kind of already did this back in chapter 28 whenever he was originally leaving the land, right? And he stops and he sees them going up and down and he goes, "This is the house of God." But he doesn't set up an altar at that point. He sets up a pillar. So there's some kind of connection or differentiation between a pillar and an altar. So I tried to look that up and see what I could find. Basically, it's also weird because later on, I think in like Deuteronomy or something like that, there actually becomes a rule about saying to not set up pillars because God hates pillars. And the closest thing that I could find of people talk about differentiation between pillars and altars is the idea that a pillar is a central thing that anyone can come and stand around and worship. And so it's ecumenical in that way. Like anybody can like come. But an altar is supposed to be like in a house, which seems weird to me because there are also ideas of altars being like outdoors. But I guess they're trying to make the point that an altar, and this also connects because I talked about how an altar is the same thing as the hearth. So like your hearth or your fireplace is also an altar in the ancient world. Um, but the conclusion that they came to was that the difference between an altar and a pillar is that an altar, because it's in a house, it's in a place that has walls. And so there are people that are inside and there are people that are outside. So it's a differentiation between the way that the Israelites worship versus the way that everybody else around them worships. And so the article that I was reading was trying to make an argument that that's why they switch from pillars to altars. It mostly says that change takes place after the patriarchal period and during the time of like Moses and all that stuff. But it's also just weird from in this chapter because like a bunch of pillars get set up in this chapter. Like there's going to be like 2 other instances of different pillars getting set up at different places. And there's just a lot of stuff happening all in this. So I just highlight that to be like, whenever I was reading that, I thought it was strange that it seems like Jacob's repeating a lot of the things that he's kind of already done.
So they gave to Jacob all the foreign gods that they had, and the rings that were in their ears. Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree that was near Shechem. And as they
and so that terebinth tree that's near Shechem, I think that's the same or similar one to the terebinth tree that's supposed to be at Mamre, which we talked about before. That's like the oak of Mamre, which is like a really important like holy tree and stuff. I actually read an interesting article that talks about that obviously they don't know if it's like the same tree, but there is a tree that people treat as the oak of Mamre. And if you look up like pictures of it and stuff, the thing's like dead. And they have a bunch of like rings around it to basically hold it together, and they have like big like because it's really weirdly shaped. It's like this like sticks out like a lot, and they have like metal bars that they're using to like hold it up and stuff. And I guess I don't know, like people were trying to say that there was like prophecies about like when the tree dies, like the Antichrist is supposed to come back. But people are also like, it looked like the tree kind of died around 1996. And so I was like, I just read all this on Wikipedia. So who like take it with a grain of salt. But it's just like, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I thought it was funny that I was like that. And then there was also some line about apparently the tree collapsed in 2019. And I was like, oh, I was like, well, that is right before COVID. And I am slightly convinced that Fauci is the Antichrist, so maybe there's a connection there. Like, yeah. Whoa, that'd be good. No, it wouldn't.
He sucks.
Really
But now that Fauci's not famous anymore, nobody cares about him. I mean, that theory gets thrown out the window.
It's gonna happen to the Antichrist too.
Everybody's just getting bored with him.
Something new's gonna happen like a few weeks later.
We're tired of this tribulation junk. Get us a new Antichrist.
Give us something. What's the worst?
Give us a new Antichrist.
The anti.
It does say we click on Turbin's tree. The second thing is in the valley where David killed the lamb. But
Oh, interesting.
yeah, on the tree, it looks pretty dead.
Yeah, it looks super dead. It looks like just a bunch of sticks basically bundled together. Okay, let's keep going.
journeyed, a terror from God fell upon the cities that were around them, so that they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. And Jacob came
And so again, like there's a lot of like these weird one-off sentences in this chapter, and that's one of them. Like whenever I read that sentence, that again reminds me of like the Exodus, of whenever they're like coming back into the land, and like everybody around them just gets really scared of them, and it seems like there's like a connection between when they're doing the things that they're supposed to do, that God called them to do, their enemies kind of get scared of them and leave them alone. But we don't really hear any more talk about that for the rest of this chapter.
to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him, and there he built an altar and called the place El Bethel, because there God had revealed himself to him when he fled from his brother. And Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried under an oak below Bethel. So he called its name Alon Bakuth.
So again, like I
There's a
said,
character who was never mentioned before.
a character that's never
For
mentioned
no
before.
purpose.
Like it's such a weird sentence. Okay, but we're gonna hold it for a second. Again, we have this same like editor, like I see it as like an editor scribal thing of that, like Luz, that is Bethel. Like that seems like that's something that was probably added back on later. Again, he's building so he builds the altar and he names it El Bethel, which I find to be a funny name because it's the God of Bethel, but Bethel is the house of God, so it's the God of the house of God, and so it's just a goofy name. But sure, whatever. But you also have the idea of like a weird thing that he's like, but you have this with a lot of the different names for like places and altars and things, because like the altar kind of gets like he calls that place the God of the house of God. So like you have this identification of the God with the place, which is kind of weird. But then, okay, now this random sentence about Deborah, who, yes, we've never heard of her before. We never hear of her after. She's buried under an oak, and then the Alon Bakuth or whatever means like the oak of weeping. It's so everybody just has to guess here as to who this Deborah person is and why she's mentioned, because here's one thing: we haven't had any instance so far of Jacob clearly meeting Isaac and Rebecca again. We also never get any mention of Rebecca's death, which is just odd, right? Like yeah, Rebecca's like still alive. And so it's like,
So Rebecca,
Rebecca hasn't been in this story at all, but for some reason, suddenly her wet, and also like if you click on like nurse, like in the Step Bible, it has it translated as suckler, and so it's like probably more like a wet nurse, and like it just seems weird that like a person like that would be like
Jacob's got issues.
yeah, it would be like living with them for that long, because if it's Rebecca's, like would have been like for Jacob,
Yeah.
right? Whenever Jacob was a kid, and now Jacob's super old. So why is this Deborah person with Jacob now? Like, who knows? And also, it's possible that like this. It's also possible that
It would be for their kids.
possibly.
She doesn't suckle Rachel. She has the kids suckle
Well,
her.
we knew that part. Kate.
That was not the part that we were
I was
confused
not
about.
picturing grown adults.
Expanded definitions of nurse.
Ye-
Kind of weird.
Yeah.
What else is there?
To suckle, nurse, suck. 1A, qual. 1A1, to suck. 1A2, suckling, babe. To give suck to. Oh.
All right, I didn't know Shakespeare was writing the definitions of the Step Bible, like entries over here.
So definitely wet nurses.
Yeah, right. Like
And
the
without thinking that, I thought it was like, oh, because Rebecca was
like she's
single.
old.
Yeah.
No, has nothing to do with
This
Rebecca.
is someone that Rebecca hasn't needed for a long time.
Exactly. And so it's also just like it's so but so also here's the thing. It might be the case that Deborah isn't even with Jacob. It might just be a statement that's thrown in there because it's like, where else? Maybe this was just some information that they had, but it's like, where else do you put it? I don't know. And so, like, it's just such a weird verse that it makes no sense as to what that has to do with anything else that's going on. But the main thing that it has similarities, in my opinion, with a lot of the other cities, with all the other verses around it, is that they all have absolutely nothing to do with each other than they roughly correlate probably with the same time period, right? Like they don't know exactly when Rebecca died. She probably died at around the same time that Isaac did. Isaac's going to die a little bit lower towards the end of the chapter. So maybe they just threw this in there because they had it in there, or they didn't know where else to put it. That's at least the way that it feels like and seems like to me.
God appeared to Jacob again when he came to Paddan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. No longer shall your name be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name." So he called his name Israel. And God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come from your own body. The land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I will give to you, and I will give the land to your offspring after you." Then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone. He poured out a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. So Jacob called the name of the place where God had spoken with him Bethel.
So again, it's like the second or third time he's named this place Bethel. But you also have so God appears to Jacob, and it's Elohim here. The only other difference is that you have El Shaddai whenever it's God Almighty. But he's reaffirming the covenant to him, but it's slightly different in that now, and you have this, you shall come from your own body, but you have this line of, and kings shall come from your own body, which I'm pretty sure that portion of it is slightly different from the previous times that the covenant was reaffirmed by God. But you also have him renaming him again a second time. And so part of this is why whenever I look at this, I don't necessarily think that this is it seems to me like this is more like a reiteration of things that already happened. And so it seems to me it's more like just the same story but like a different version of it that they like tacked on to the end. And so that's why it's like the same thing that already happened, we're telling you again. And part of the reason why I think that is because also when we get into the next part, you're going to have that, when we get to the genealogy of Esau, you're going to have that same thing happen where like they explicitly say the same thing twice. And it's just like, why are they doing this? And it just, to me, like, and so so this goes into a little bit of, and this is kind of why I want it goes into a little bit of how do you think about the Bible and how do you think about how the Bible was written? Because if you think that the Bible was one dude who wrote down chronologically how everything happened, to me, this just doesn't make sense. Like it just doesn't really make sense as to what's going on here. It doesn't make sense as to why God renames Jacob a second time. It doesn't make sense as to why Jacob names a place that and also and he goes, and Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken to him, a pillar of stone. Well, just up. Remember, I talked about. I was like, in chapter 28, he set up that pillar and named the place Bethel. And then now the thing that's supposed to be different is he's setting up an altar there. He just set up the altar named El Bethel. And now after having this encounter, he's setting up another pillar? Like it seems weird. And so to me, it makes more sense if you think about it of just being like, it's probably just the same story, but they have two different versions of it, and they like they put both versions in the text so that people had it. If you don't like that, then you deal with Jacob setting up.
Don't read this chapter.
Yeah, don't read this chapter, which honestly feels like that's what most people do. It's just like, oh, we're just gonna ignore this like end part that sounds weird. Like the commentaries on these two are like really sparse. They're just like, yeah, like literally it reads like you just copy and paste. Like even the commentary, it looks like he just copied and pasted stuff from earlier and restated it again. And it was like, okay. Okay.
Then they journeyed from Bethel. When they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel went into labor, and she had hard labor. And when her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for you have another son." And as her soul was departing, for she was dying, she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died, and she was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar over her tomb. It is the pillar of Rachel's tomb, which is there to this day. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Eder.
Okay. So we have Rachel giving birth to her last child, Jacob's last child. Ben-Oni, do one of you have the Step Bible open and can give me the translation of Ben-Oni? I think it's like, yeah, it's son of my sorrow. And then Benjamin is like son of my right hand. And so it's interesting. So you kind of see the difference in how they're viewing this kid. One is as she's leaving this world and as she's dying. So she's obviously sad about that. And then, but in this, I mean, if there's any kind of theme of this chapter, it's the like kind of finally having redemption. And Jacob kind of even like redeems Benjamin's name here and is like, the son of my right hand is usually like, your right hand is like your symbol of power, right? So it's like your symbol of strength and everything. And it makes sense to me as to why he do this, because obviously like Rachel is his favorite and he was ready to leave after Rachel had a son, right? And so now he's got a second son by Rachel. And so it's like even more so feels like these offsprings of Rachel are like it seems to me in his head that he views them as like the line of that the actual covenant's going to like pass through, right? It's like this particular like set is what it feels like of why he gives so much honor to them, even though that we obviously know that's not exactly how it goes, right? But that's the way that I read it. You also have again, he sets up another pillar over her tomb. And then you also have this subtle shift that takes place, which is that it starts calling him Israel. And so we have a couple of verses where he's called Israel. It's going to switch back and forth between Jacob and Israel, but it starts referring to him as that. You also have, again, this like one-off reference that's kind of weird to the Tower of Eder. If you click on the word tower there, it's Midgall, and then Eder means like of the flock. The other thing that I want to reference is that she gave birth on the way to Ephrath, and then it has that is Bethlehem. So there's kind of a relationship between this last birth and Bethlehem. And it seems to me like there is some kind of like messianic connections here. And part of how you can get there is if you look up the only other place in scripture where Midgall Eder appears. So if someone can go to Micah 4:8. Anybody can read that. Is anybody there? Diego.
And you, O tower of the flock, hill of the daughter of Zion, to you shall it come, the former dominion shall come, kingship for the daughter of Jerusalem.
And can you click on the where it says flock or whatever?
Midgall, Eder, tower of the flock.
Yeah.
Shepherd's walk, tower near Bethlehem.
So that's the only other place where the tower is mentioned, and that's a clearly like messianic connection and reference. So who knows why it's there, but it seems to be some kind of messianic connection. It's also weird in that case because it associates this tower with the location of Bethlehem, but in that verse, it also points the location as Mount Zion, and Mount Zion is Jerusalem. And Jerusalem and Bethlehem are near each other, but they're also kind of far away. I don't know what the exact distance is between the two. I think it's like, I want to say even like 20 miles. I can Google that. Should I look that up earlier? Yeah, it did not give me the correct Bethlehem and Jerusalem.
Bethlehem, North Carolina.
It gave me like, oh, it gave me the distance between here and Bethlehem. And so it says 6,000 miles.
Can we walk there?
Man. Which is funny because I was like, okay, yeah, I was right. It's 5.5 miles. I was like, it's about 6 miles. Yeah, about 6 miles between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. I thought that was right. Okay. Yeah, so there seems to be some kind of connection there, but who knows? Okay, let's keep going.
While Israel lived in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12.
Okay, again, a one-off verse that is just like,
Sounds like, ooh, we got a good story coming up. And here was other.
no, like absolutely nothing. But remember, I think I mentioned it before. I was like, there's some reason why, like, because Reuben is the firstborn. There's some reason why, like, the right of the firstborn is like taken away from Reuben. And I was like, I can't remember what it is. I thought it had to do with Dinah. No, I'm pretty sure it's this. It's like it's that one verse that he like laid with Bilhah. His father's concubine, and if you remember, Bilhah is Rachel's servant, and Reuben is Leah's kid. And so remember, if you remember back to like the story of Noah, you had that weird what exactly is the seeing of my father's nakedness thing and might have something to do with like sleeping with like his wives. That seems to be some kind of connection here too. But
We don't, but I mean, that would look how severely Noah took that.
yes,
Or at least how we get to see how severely
Yes.
he took it. And we get to see nothing, at least here. Until maybe Jacob dies.
later's, yeah. And so like it's again, it's weird. It's like it's just a bunch of stuff all thrown in there at the very end. And who knows like what Reuben's like if Reuben had like some like outside motivations for it, like or something. Like I don't know. It's weird.
12. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's servant, Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant, Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Paddan Aram. And Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, or Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years, and Isaac breathed his last, and he died and was gathered to his people, old and full of days. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him.
So again, like we just have so we have this like little genealogy list that seems to kind of just like wrap up this section. We're about to get a much longer genealogy list that seems to me from the perspective of like modern readers, it seems really pointless, but it's not pointless. And definitely probably wouldn't have been pointless to the people at the time. But like this section on Isaac and on the bulk of Jacob's life are over, and Jacob is still going to be a character going forward, but really he's just there as a supporting role to Joseph, and most of the remaining part is going to be about Joseph.
So I double checked and I've forgotten how old Isaac was when he had Jacob and Esau. He was 60.
Yes.
So Jacob and Esau are 120 here.
Yes.
And didn't Jacob, have at least his first son? He wasn't too old. We don't think, or do we not know?
There's debate on how old
So I guess the
he
point I'm getting
was.
at
The one,
Is Joseph already out of the picture by the time that they're burying Isaac?
so some of the older, so you'd have to find like no. Joseph and the kids probably like if you overlap like the timelines, I think it is the case that they know Isaac, and are potentially kind of even relatively old. There's some stuff that Jacob might have been as old as 60 or 70 whenever he married Rachel and Leah and had all the kids.
Well, I guess he
And
basically
apparently, and the other thing is that he has all of those.
Joseph.
He has all of those kids, and Joseph being the last one, in a 20-year period.
Yeah.
And then Benjamin is like after that, after they come into the land. But yeah, that's all in like a 20-year period. Yeah, I didn't bring it up. I think it's on actually one of the videos from like a while ago, but
But yeah, I was just kind of wondering, like, what was Joseph already like second in command at this point, or further along, or earlier? Just a thought.
yeah, so if you look at this chronology picture, it has oh wow, that looks awful. It has Isaac dead right there. and then a little bit after that is whenever well it's well that's when Israel arrives in Egypt. So actually actually it has here that Joseph is in Egyptian prison. So actually it does have that Joseph is in Egypt when Isaac dies, according to yeah. This is the British Bible School. So
then we gotta find
we-
another source.
I don't know if we can trust the British on this. But and actually, I think if you go onto this site, he actually does a pretty good. They actually do a pretty good job of explaining why they come up with the dates that they do. They have a bunch of different references and stuff for mostly in the future, and then they like trace back to like when different stuff happens. But that's the conclusion that you come to. Yeah, and so it leads to kind of weird conclusions, but that's the way it goes with a lot of this stuff. So let's quickly do was there anything else that I wanted to say about that chapter? I don't think so. Oh, just the only other thing about the death of Isaac is that Jacob and Esau bury him. And like the last we saw them together, like Jacob kind of like lied to Esau. And yeah, he was like he was supposed to go with them and then he didn't. But then I guess at some point when their dad dies, they come back together and they're like, "Hey, we're good again."
Maybe
But-
at the burial, he's like, "Hey, didn't I tell you to follow me?" What?
Yeah, I don't remember, literally years ago, like decades ago.
Jacob, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's like I don't remember that.
Oh, that's weird.
So yeah.
I could hit in the head.
But all right, so Genesis 36.
Chapter 36. These are the generations of Esau, that is Edom. Esau took his wives from the Canaanites. Ida, the daughter of Elon the Hittite.
Okay. This chapter is super repetitive. So I'm mostly probably just going to play it. I'm probably going to stop it almost never. That Esau, that is Edom. That's said like 8 times or something in this chapter. And also this like the like verses, I think it's like verses like 1 through 8 are going to get repeated in verses like 9 through 14. So it's just really weird. And so to me it really reads like they had multiple copies of this story and kind of just threw it all in, and for some reason whoever was editing it and maintaining it didn't feel the need to like get rid of a lot of the stuff that was repeated, or maybe thought that there was differentiation between them and thought it was really important to keep all of it. I don't know. It seems to me like the overemphasis on the Esau, that is Edom, is because it seems like the author is really trying to tie those two together, possibly because they're different words, right? Esau and Edom are slightly different words. And so maybe he's, as a later writer, is trying to make sure that people understand that he's talking about the clan here versus like the person, or he's like identifying the clan with the person. It's something like that seems to be going on, but I really don't know why it's so repetitive, and I couldn't find anybody really talking about it. But
Aholibamah, the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite. And Basemath, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Nebaioth. And Ida bore to Esau Eliphaz. Basemath bore Reuel. And Aholibamah bore Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These are the sons of Esau who were born to him in the land of Canaan. Then Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all the members of his household, his livestock, all his beasts, and all his property that he had acquired in the land of Canaan. He went into a land away from his brother Jacob, for their possessions were too great for them to dwell together. The land of their sojournings could not support them because of their livestock. So Esau settled in the hill country of Seir. Esau is Edom. These are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in the hill country of Seir.
So that portion was like a little bit different, but is also not really the story that we got previously of why they separated, but kind of makes sense. It's a similar story with Abraham and Lot. So, okay.
These are the names of Esau's sons. Eliphaz, the son of Ida, the wife of Esau. Reuel, the son of Basemath, the wife of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz.
So again,
Timnah was a concubine
we already
of
got
Eliphaz,
all of
Esau's
those
son.
people.
She bore Amalek to Eliphaz.
Okay, I'm going to pause it right there only to highlight this line about Timnah was the concubine of Eliphaz, Esau's son. She bore Amalek. Amalek is like the father of the Amalekites, and the Amalekites have a long and many of these people are like the fathers of different groups that the Israelites are going to end up fighting. So different things that happen from the Amalekites. The Amalekites make war with Israel in the wilderness. Joshua is ordered by Moses to do battle with the Israelites. Moses watches from a hillside, and while his hands are raised, Israel prevails. That whole story, that's them fighting the Amalekites. Israelites are specifically commanded in Deuteronomy to blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Once they have taken possession of the promised land, they're told to kill all of the Amalekites and their livestock, but Saul doesn't do that. So there's that portion. The Amalekites also invade at one point and attack Saul. And also, when Saul eventually dies, it's an Amalekite that tells David that he killed Saul and is giving the crown back to David, and David kills that Amalekite. So they're around in a big part of Israel's story. And that line about them being born to a concubine, there's a line in Josephus, who Josephus is a Jewish historian after even the New Testament period, and he references the Amalekites as being the descendants of a bastard. And so part of the reason why he probably thinks that is because of this verse. So
Doesn't that mean like a third of Israel is Judah?
yeah,
Because four,
we'll ignore that.
there are 4 tribes that come from Gog. They're not the big ones, though.
They're not the big ones. And also, a couple of those tribes they do talk crap about. Particularly, there's a whole thing about how the Antichrist is supposed to come from the tribe of Dan.
Oh,
So and Dan is one of the tribes from concubine. I don't know. Probably not. But yeah. So there was way too much talk of Antichrist in this, like in these 2 chapters. Okay.
These are the sons of Ida, Esau's wife. These are the sons of Reuel, Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These are the sons of Basemath, Esau's wife. These are the sons of Aholibamah, the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon, Esau's wife. She bore to Esau Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These are the chiefs of the sons of Esau, the sons of Eliphaz the firstborn of Esau, the chiefs Teman, Omar, Zepho, Kenaz, Korah, Gatam, and Amalek. These are the chiefs of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Ida. These are the sons of Ruel, Esau's son, the chiefs Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These are the chiefs of Ruel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Basemath, Esau's wife. These are the sons of Holabama, Esau's wife, the chiefs Jeush, Jalem, and Korah. These are the chiefs born of Aholabama, the daughter of Anah, Esau's wife. These are the sons of Esau, that is Edom, and these are their chiefs.
So again, all those names are listed like 2 or 3 times there. Like, I don't know what's going on. Obama. This next section, not even descendants of Esau. Seir, if you remember, it said Esau was living in Seir, and there's always the connection between the person's name and the place and all that stuff. So Seir is a guy, and they were just the people. These are just basically describing the people that were living in the region of Edom before the Edomites got there.
These are the sons of Seir the Horite, the inhabitants of the land: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishan, Ezer, and Dishan. These are the chiefs of the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. These are the sons of Shobal: Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. These are the sons of Zibeon: Aya and Anah. He is the Anah who found the hot springs in the wilderness, as he pastured the donkeys of Zibeon his father. These are
A great line, an absolute like banger of a line. This dude is just remembered for finding hot springs by some donkeys. Like, I have no idea why that's significant. I couldn't find anyone talking about it, but I was just like, absolute banger. Like that's a good Bible quiz, like top tier Final Jeopardy question. Like, who was it that found the hot springs in the wilderness as he pastured donkeys of Zibeon his father? It was like, no one's gonna know that.
children of Anah, Dishan and Aholabama, the daughter of Anah. These are the sons of Dishan: Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Kiran. These are the sons of Ezer: Bilhan, Zaavan, and Achan. These are the sons of Dishan: Uz and Aaron. These are the chiefs of the Horites, the chiefs Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishan, Ezer, and Dishan. These are the chiefs of the Horites, chief by chief in the land of Seir. These are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the Israelites.
Okay. You stop there. Because this is a verse that just screams to me, not written by Moses. Okay. These are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the Israelites. Now, one of the only ways that people can say, oh, what Moses is doing here is he's making a prophecy, right? Because Moses doesn't know that there are going to be kings over the Israelites. People go, oh, no, he might, because in the last chapter, whenever the covenant is given, there's that little switch to the covenant that's added. Kings will come from you. So therefore, Moses knows that the Israelites will eventually have kings. Okay, one.
I like that interpretation. Let's move on.
Like it's so like to me like that's just so reaching for straws. It's like if you're going to be making a prophecy about how people will have kings in the future, why are you saying it in the past tense? Because it's said before any king reigned, past tense, over the Israelites. Like the kings over Israel were a while ago. And so it's just pretty clear to me that that's a line and that this is probably a section that was written way later. Now I don't think that means that the entirety of it was. I just mean that I think that this section was probably added later on. Why was it added later on? I don't know. But it also seems really weird that Moses is writing this really repetitive, unclear genealogy, and then he's like, now I'm going to make a prophecy about Israel having kings. And it's going to be a lead in to another genealogy that no one cares about. It's like, what? Like, it just seems so weird. And so to me, it just seems like, no, this was put in there because it's a part of the description of what's going on. It's giving the historical context of these people and where they're at. And some writer added in this line so that people would know when these people were kings, right? That's what it seems like to me.
Bel, the
I
son
don't
of
know how
Beor.
else you would prophesy, like if he was prophesying. Grammatically speaking, I'm not sure what else you could do with that sentence. Before there was a king in Israel, these were the kings. Maybe it's the best. That's my only. That's all that argument has, though. Like, my point is like
Like if it was a prophecy,
still,
you'd be like, well, also like you wouldn't like it just doesn't make sense as to why you would
placement of it purely is enough to say why would you think this is a prophecy?
Yeah, like it doesn't sound like any other prophetic language anywhere else in scripture.
That too.
Like you go to Isaiah, you go to Ezekiel, they're all like all the prophetic languages even other places in Genesis where it's prophetic, it's usually like in a poem kind of a thing. It's not just a random lead-in sentence about like when people were alive. Like
Moses
it's just
wanted
weird.
people to know. All right, there was the hot springs guy.
There's the hot springs,
Here's
which
prophecy.
big prophecy was hot springs.
So there's two prophecies in this chapter, Kyle.
Oh man, I completely missed them. But yeah, like if it was going to be a prophecy, it would. I feel like you would just have something like, you'd be like, there will be kings, and like there will be a king over
Yeah.
Israel,
He would
and like
just say that.
and
instead.
but before there are going to be kings in Israel, these are the kings who are reigning, or these are the kings that reigned before the kings in Israel started to reign or will start to reign or
And
something
also
like
the
that.
fact that, like,
It's just
other
weird.
Stuff in the first 5 where it's like we know that Moses didn't write them because it's like, well, how did Moses know about?
Well,
that?
you'd also have the issue of that if Moses wrote these words and Moses is making a prophecy about there being kings, what the heck is Samuel's issue about being mad at all the Israelites for wanting a king?
That's true.
Moses made a prophecy about there being a king. Why is it a big issue? In fact, why is God mad about it?
Not bad.
Like, God seems to have God's the one that prophesied that Israel was going to have kings,
I
and
told you
Moses
that
put it
nothing
in,
happens.
and now he's mad at them? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you read it like that, in my opinion.
I feel like that's the strongest argument for it being right.
Yeah, it's just like, you just have to
That-
know the context of the whole story to, like,
This is obviously
make
a
that happen.
make or break for someone's faith.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like
Someone's very soul.
the way that I understand, like, I mean, it seems like that for some people. It's like
for
like
cool-
the people's the idea of biblical inerrancy that they have in their head is like, oh, it really matters that all of the Torah is written by Moses, even though we don't even actually have a verse that says that the Torah is written by Moses.
Hey, guys, it's me.
But like it's just tradition that that's the case. But it's like we really have to believe that. And if any portion of the Torah is not written by Moses, even the part where it says Moses was the most humble man in like all of the world, if we don't believe that that's written by Moses, then we can't believe any of the Bible. And it's like, okay, it's just a weird conclusion. It's just a weird conclusion.
It doesn't make any sense to me because my Bible's written it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it says these were the kings who reigned in Edom before any Israelite king reigned.
Yeah.
That's actually a better wording.
Yeah,
I was very wrong.
Well, they probably worded it that way better, so it sounds better.
Let's go with the Samuel argument because that's a killer.
But okay. Samuel never read Genesis. He was a bad prophet.
I had very bad prophet.
reigned in Edom, the name of his city being Dinhaba. Bela died, and Jobab the son of Zerah of Bozrah reigned in his place. Jobab died, and Husham of the land of the Temanites in his place.
I love
Husham
it.
died, and Hadad the
Husham
son
died.
of Bedad, who defeated Midian in the country of Moab, reigned in his place, the name of his city being Avith. Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah reigned in his place. Samlah died, and Shaul of Rehoboth on the Euphrates reigned in his place. Shaul died, and Baal-Hanan the son of Akbor reigned in his place.
Very
Baal-Hanan
close.
the son of Akbor died, and Hadar reigned in his place, the name of his city being Pau. His wife's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, daughter of Mezahab. These are the names of the chiefs of Esau according to their clans and their dwelling places by their names. The chiefs Timnah, Alva, Jetheth, Aholabama, Elah, Pinon, Kenaz, Teman, Mibzar, Magdiel, and Iram. These are the chiefs of Edom, that is Esau, the father of Edom, according to their dwelling places in the land of their possession.
Okay, so just a couple of last things. One of the things that's kind of interesting to me is that a lot of the names, especially in this last portion, I just happen to know this because anytime I start playing Pokemon, I've done this for like the last like decade or whatever or more. I pick a theme for like what I'm going to nickname all of my Pokemon for that one. And this most recent one, I picked Canaanite gods. And so like the main reason why I know this is because I've been staring at long lists on Wikipedia of Canaanite gods that I'm like, oh, a lot of the names in this last little portion are actually the names of Canaanite gods. So like Hadad is a Canaanite god. Hadad, whatever. Baal Hanan. Baal is obviously a Canaanite god. Baal shows up everywhere. And also Lotan. Lotan is a Canaanite like monster god thing that's actually associated with Leviathan a lot. Because they're both
Pokemon. That's a little.
Lotan.
No, a Lotan. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Lotad. I'm like, that's just a straight up Pokemon.
This isn't supposed to be a reference to Pokemon. It's supposed to be a reference to Canaanite gods.
You know Pokemon didn't go first.
Yeah, no. The only other thing that I think is weird is that a lot at the end there where it says like these are the names by their chiefs, Timnah, blah blah blah, Aholabama. I'm pretty sure like Aholabama is a woman.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's one of the wives of Esau, and so is Timnah. Timnah is a daughter. Yeah, it's up at the top. That's the concubine for that bore the Amalekites. It's also the daughter of Seir. And so it seems really weird to me that you have this like mixture of like at the end here of who are the chiefs of Esau, where some of them are men and some of them are women. And so I thought that was interesting. The only I had some other connection. Oh, yes, actually, that's actually exactly it. There's a theory. There's a theory that some people have that they think that Jobab is Job. And part of the reason, and I think this just is due to the similarity in the name, right? Also because as we've talked about with Job before, Job is arguably probably one of the oldest books of the Bible written. There's I believe there's no references to Yahweh in it. It's all just kind of like generic, like El and like Ha Elohim. And also you have a lot of mention of the name Eliphaz in this passage. And Eliphaz is the name of one of Job's friends in the book of Job. And so so it's probably more just people are seeing similar names in one place of the Bible and seeing those similar names in other places in the Bible and being like, oh, they're the same people. There's no evidence to suggest that that's the case, but I figured I'd let you guys know. That was kind of the last connection. So does anybody have anything else? Time traveling.
I want you to name your Lotad Lotan.
No, no.
I can't believe that's gonna make it on the recording.
Very dumb. Is there anything serious and not dumb to add in the last minute of this?
You're asking them what people-
I am. Okay, I'm gonna end it here then.